George Sedano, Tim Calishaw, Harry Lyles Jr., Bill Barnwell. How are we even going to have enough time in today's show for everything? No words. Just onomatopoeia from you people. Bam, boom, ooh, wow. And this is the biggest wow from this one. Cheryl Reed.
Because this was stolen from us.
Woo! Let's go around the horn.
Whoa. Stolen. I love them. Those are fighting words.
We will get to that momentarily. Detroit 31, Minnesota 29. Tremendous ball decided in the last minutes. And Goff giving out completions like flyers on the street. And the Lions dealing the Vikings their first loss. And maybe taking over the NFC in the process. Let's see what the national panel thinks on that. Bill Barnwell, around the horn to you. What did the Lions prove with this win in Minnesota?
They proved that they have the capability to be the best offense in all of football, because the one thing they've struggled with in years past is the one thing Jared Goff showed yesterday, his ability to act against pressure. That's been the book on Jared Goff. Last 3 years, 9th best quarterback in football without pressure by QBR, 30th in the NFL when he's pressured. But yesterday, facing a Vikings defense that's flummoxed guys like C.J. Stroud and Brock Purdy with pressure, Goff was 10 of 11 for 164 yards and 2 touchdowns under pressure. Right now, he is the best quarterback in football in terms of his week-to-week play.
There we go.
He's the MVP candidate.
There we go. That's what Detroit proved to Bill Barnwell. Goff, an MVP candidate. Harry Lyles Jr., around the horn to you. What did Detroit prove?
I mean, Tony, to me, the immediate question was, how's this team going to look without Aiden Hutchinson? And obviously, they were rotating guys in and out of that position. It didn't look quite the same as you might expect, but it was enough to get the job done on the road. Obviously, the offense having a lot to do with that. This rushing attack, to me, to Bill's point, helps out Jared Goff a whole lot. It helps that he's being accurate, but they had absolutely no response for Jahmyr Gibbs, who is a player that I think is not just good now, but is going to continue to get better. So to me, Detroit proved that winning a game like that on the road in their own division against a team that has been a very popular pick amongst people so far, I think Detroit is the class of the NFC right now.
Class of the NFC, Harry Lyles Jr. says. Tim Calishaw, around the horn to you. What did Detroit prove?
The Lions proved, Tony, that they can get over the heartbreak of last year's NFC Championship game and do what they have never done in 58 years, which is get to a Super Bowl. They have the offense to do it. There's no question about it. We have to be a little careful with some of these Goff numbers. He set an NFL record yesterday, best completion percentage over a 4-game stretch. I'm old enough to remember when Jaden Daniels set that record, Tony. Okay? So we got to be a little careful. We got to be a little careful with it. Everybody has pretty good percentages these days, but he's great. And with that, Gibbs and Montgomery doing what they do. The defense obviously missed Hutchinson, but they still made plays. They made enough plays to get the job done.
George Sedano, I hear some high praise. Super Bowl contender, says Calishaw. NFC class, says Lyles. MVP candidate in the quarterback position, says Barnwell. What did the Lions prove to you?
I'm ready to take a step further. They are the team to beat, Tone, in my opinion. The team to beat to win the whole thing. And let me address something that Bill Barnwell said, which I agree with, which is Jared Goff under pressure has been a disaster, okay? But you know who you want to give credit to? 2 things. Give credit to their offensive line. It's arguably, if not the best offensive line in football, but also Ben Johnson, their offensive coordinator. You want to talk about a guy who can throw anything you want, anything he can throw out at you. Here's the deal. Last week against the Cowboys, he threw out all the bells and whistles. Super exotic stuff, crazy stuff, all the stuff on the drawing board he put out there. This week against a defense that's very exotic with Brian Flores, he went super simple that allowed Jared Goff to have the game he had and the efficiency that he had. And to add to Calishaw's point, what I'll say is this. Yes, Jaden Daniels set that record, but he's also only one of 2 players in the history of the sport to do that with over 1,000 yards passing in those 4 games. Peyton Manning being the other guy. So if you don't want to give it to Jaden Daniels and give him credit, it's Manning.
That was the Lions' share. Bill Barnwell on Minnesota and their first loss. Take away anything from their perspective?
Yeah, they got out to a 10-0 lead, the exact formula they've had in weeks past. Get that early lead, but make the other team one-dimensional, rush the quarterback, and they still could not win the game that way. They were not able to make enough plays on offense to pull this off, and we found some holes in their defense that teams are going to exploit, attacking them downfield in the weeks to come.
They did come back from a double-digit deficit twice in this game, which is usually a good sign that you're capable of playing from behind a little bit, which they hadn't done all season long. We've been warm, we'll move on. Steelers 37, Jets 15. Russell Wilson cooking, 264-3. A dominant debut. Pressing the right buttons, or the Jets continuing to have an empty search for answers?
I think it's more about the right buttons. George Pickens was not a factor during the Justin Fields era with the Steelers. Even though they were 4-2, they needed Wilson. They needed somebody who to throw those jump balls, to let him go up and get to beat the corners that are covering him. Pickens made the one sensational catch that he bobbled at least twice before bringing it in. But things are kind of going the Steelers' way this year. They're 5-2 in a year where there's not anybody we say that's a great team. Mm-hmm. So I think Wilson, even though a lot of us have thought he's kind of looked done there in Denver, he might be what this team needs in that it had the other pieces that were already
Harry Lyles Jr., a takeaway from Pittsburgh's win?
Yeah, I'm not completely ready to give Mike Tomlin all the credit on this. It's one game. We still saw, especially in those first few drives, that Russell Wilson's probably still got some bad football in him. There were a couple of plays, particularly I think it was their third down, where I think Justin Fields absolutely would have gotten a first down for them in that position because of his ability to run the football. So, and I also feel like a lot of those catches that we saw George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth make, I felt like those were good tosses from Russell Wilson, but also that has a lot to do with your playmakers as well. So I'm still not totally there yet with this being like this great grand decision. But also my biggest takeaway from this game is the New York Jets stink, okay? This is not a good football team. We have continued to try to talk ourselves into them, firing Robert Saleh, getting all of Aaron Rodgers' friends, adding Devontae Adams. Like, this is not a good football team. They're 2-5. They were 4-3 this time last year, averaging the same amount of points. This is a terrible culture. Aaron Rodgers talked about after the game, we weren't into the game. We didn't have the energy. How do you not have the energy for a Sunday night football game? If you can't get up and go out and play and show up for that particular football game, then maybe you guys just don't want to be there, and maybe you have a culture problem that is beyond beyond fixing. You can't fix that.
George Sedano, I saw you shaking your head no there for a second. What's cooking?
Well, Tone, as the only panelist on Tuesday, including with our senior panelist, Tim Kalishaw from the Lone Star State being on that particular panel, saying that Tomlin deserved all the credit because, I reserve the right to trust him because he's gone through a million quarterbacks here recently, including Kenny Pickett, who took him to the playoffs, and he was able to dump him for the next guy. Russell Wilson is a better passer of the football than Justin Fields. There's nothing wrong with saying that. Justin Fields is more athletic. Justin Fields can take hits better. Justin Fields can run the ball better. But if you want to get the ball to George Pickens, who's been grossly underutilized this season, you're going to go with the best option, which is Russell Wilson. Now, with that said, with the Jets, Aaron Rodgers is no longer a difference maker through this point in the season. 40 years old, off an Achilles, 3 opportunities prior to this week of finishing games and closing out games with game-winning drives, and then in the second half, just completely a disaster. All this is on him. And by the way, their defense, the Jets, they're giving up 30 points in 2 games since Robert Saleh's been fired. They were giving up 17 before that. So this is the bed you made, Aaron. You got to lay in it.
And Bill Barnwell, take away from last night.
Yeah, this Jets team cannot deal with any sort of adversity. They're up 15-6 heading into halftime. They have the football. They're in position to go up by double digits. Aaron Rodgers throws an interception, they turn the ball over, commit a PI, give up a touchdown, and they fall apart in the second half. This team's defense is a mess, to George's point, after the Robert Saleh decision, which made no sense at the time, looks even worse now. And we're getting to the point where we're trying to find excuses for this team that don't involve Aaron Rodgers making mistakes. He has 7 interceptions already this year. A guy whose calling card for years past was avoiding turnovers, avoiding negative plays. They don't have the kind of offense that can overcome that. They might not even have the kind of defense that can overcome that at this point.
We'll have that be the last word on that then. Now the story of the night. A championship for the New York Liberty and a season-ending scorched earth press conference, the likes of which we've never heard from the losing coach, Cheryl Reeve. We'll get to that in a second. The drama and pressure in this one, unrelenting. The play was a lot of things. Tough, feisty, hard-nosed, ugly, and dreadful, especially for Ionescu and Stewart. For New York, it was Jonquil Jones and Niara Sabally that put them over the top. But it's all about the end of regulation in this play. This play, this foul, which gave New York the chance to tie in the free throw line, which this time Stewart delivered it, and this reaction from Cheryl Reeve after the game.
I know all the headlines will be Reeve cries foul. Bring it on, right? Bring it on. Because this was stolen from us.
This bleep was stolen from us. Superstar Napheesa Collier, who should have been Finals MVP with a win, posting photos of many, many calls that either went against the Lynx or that went for the Liberty. There was audio from Mic'd Up of Sandy Brundell, Liberty coach, telling Breanna Stewart to embellish if needed on that last play. George, there's a lot to unpack here. But was the game, the championship, and the greatest season in league history stolen, like Reeves says?
You know what, Tone? The officiating in that game was brutal. So I'm going to say yes. Like, at least that play changed the trajectory of the game. We went into overtime because of it. So I'm going to agree with Cheryl Reeve in that particular situation. When you watch that play with Stewie, she took 4 steps before she even got to the dotted line. That's too many steps, Tone, last time I checked. And then the contact was absolutely marginal. And Napheesa Collier, I'm glad she posted those pics. She took 23 shots, Tone. 23 shots, no free throw attempts. There's only been 2 other instances in her career where she's taken even 15 or more where she hasn't gone to the free throw line. She's one of the best two-way players in the sport. It was awful to watch the way that ended. It should have been decided by the players, not the officials.
Tim Kalishow, around the horn to you.
Not stolen, Tony. The last call in regulation was a bad call, but there are lots of bad calls in the course of the game. The Lynx got to overtime. What did they do with that opportunity? 0 for 6, 5 turnovers. Brutal offense, which both teams played a lot of last night, but Minnesota could not get out of their own way with the ball. That's what
Harry
cost them
Lyles Jr., around the horn to you.
Tony, I'm not going to repeat all the points about the calls in that game because George nailed it perfectly. To me, though, I do think the point that Cheryl Reeve made stands not just for that particular game, but for the WNBA season as a whole. I don't know how many times this year watching a game, it's one thing to get the call wrong on the floor. It's another thing when the call is challenged. You take the time to review the call and you still get it wrong. Like, this is a problem that the WNBA needs to fix this offseason because your game is as popular as it's ever been. You're going to continue to get new eyes. Fix that issue going into next year.
Bill Barnwell, around the horn to you.
George is wrong to say that call sent the game to overtime. The Lynx had 2 chances to close this game out in regulation and did not fire up anything impressive. They were up 2 with 30 seconds left, ran down the clock, a contested layup that misses. Then after the game is tied, they have 5 seconds, take a timeout, get the ball to the other side of the court. They fire up a 3 so quickly that the Liberty should have had enough time to get the rebound, call timeout, and get their own shot off. That is on the coach he was complaining, not on.
George, the Liberty have waited the entire history of the franchise, the last founding member to get a championship. They had a 1 of 19 from Ionescu. Stewart struggled. And now you want to take this.
Savali deserves all the credit in the world, Tone. She was amazing, particularly in the second half.
And John Paul Jones,
I will
the
say
MVP.
this.
Yes.
Yeah, the MVP, for sure. But I'll say this. It's also separately from that. I would say to Bill Barnwell, look, man, when you have a call go that way against you, it could work. It could work in your favor. You get mad about it and go do something, or it can weigh on you. Lastly, Kathy Engelbert, not a great look separately, wearing a dress that has the New York skyline on it for the last game of the season. Not a great look is what I would say.
That's the last word. Taking a break. Pirates till next. Los Angeles Dodgers to the World Series for the 4th time in 8 years. New York Yankees for the 41st time in their history. It'll be the 12th time they met in the series, but first in 43 years. We have all week to get to that. How they got here. Stantonian blasts. Giancarlo non si può stopparlo. And Soto with his moments. And on the other side, the Dodgers, a total demolishing of everything in their way. NLCS record for runs, every win by 5 or more. Tim, who's had a better run to the series, Yankees or Dodgers?
The Yankees have had the better run. They beat a better team. They did it in 5 games instead of 6. And the main thing is they beat up the best closer in the American League, Clase. They beat up Gaddis yesterday. Cleveland lives on that bullpen. If the Dodgers think they have a better bullpen than Cleveland, forget about it.
Dono, you are apoplectic with that answer from Kalish.
Get out of here. The Dodgers beat the two best teams in the second half. The Dodgers beat the Mets and the Padres, both the best teams in the second half. The Dodgers have no starting pitchers. They've been doing it with bullpen the entire time.
That's good.
What are we talking about here?
Bill Barnwell.
The Dodgers, the blowout victories. I mean, the Yankees were impressive in this series, but the only reason Soto hit that 3-run home run is because the Guardians blew what should have been an easy double play ball late in that game. So I think both teams are playing really well, but the Dodgers overcoming their lack of starting pitching and bats up and down the lineup, something the Yankees do not have.
Harry Lyles Jr.
Yeah, I give it to the Dodgers as well, and I think you extend it to the regular season. I mean, we started off this season with a slower Shohei Ohtani after everything that was going on with his interpreter. You had the rotation go down. Freddie Freeman was dealing with that ankle injury. They had to figure out their offense. And then for you to end up at the NLCS, score a record 46 runs and outscore the Mets by 22, I think it's the Dodgers without a doubt.
Wow, Kalish taking a big L there from the three other people on the panel. College, Oregon, moving up to number 1. And Georgia, the biggest riser after pounding Texas. Horns fall to 5. Sark says he's sticking with Ewers.
7.
That shut up both Ewers and Manning on the bench, dazed, only surpassed by the fan who needs to deal with Head and Shoulders yesterday. Voluminous. Harry, you were there. Also, Tennessee rising, Indiana rising, Miami surviving. Lyles, what stood out from the weekend in college?
Wish I had that much hair. To me, it doesn't have to do with any of the results. It's what happened in the second quarter of the Texas-Georgia game. The fact that he sat Quinn Ewers for Arch Manning, the sounds in that stadium, the excitement that everybody wanted to see Arch, I think creates a huge problem for them going forward. They're undoubtedly the most interesting team because of that situation. It was already a quarterback controversy, and he added fire to that.
Bill Barnwell.
It's Tennessee proving that there's a new order in the SEC. Tennessee, this is the sort of game they would have lost in years past. 2 missed field goals in the first half, 3 turnovers. They would have been getting blown out by Alabama in years past. Instead, they hit some big plays in the second half, run for 220 yards. They revealed not just that they can beat Alabama, but there's a margin of error as they try to beat Alabama.
George Dana.
Tony, 7 words for you. Cardiac canes and Cam Ward is the Heisman, baby. That's actually 8 words, sorry.
That's all you got? All right, okay, all right, interesting tactic there. Tim Kalish, how about you?
Tony, I had that kind of hair when I was in Austin. But some of us alums were wondering if that number 1 was legit. That big win over Michigan seemed to be getting a little smaller by the week, and Georgia took it to the Longhorns. Credit to the fans for stopping the game so they could get that call right.
Oh, is that it?
Pass interference call. That's what happened there. That's the only thing Texas did right.
There's our horn, and here is our goodbye to Mr. Kalishaw and Mr. Barnwell. George Sedano, Harry Lyles Jr., that's our showdown. Next.
Let's go.
Around the Horn is presented by the
Saquon Barkley stomping all over the Giants to the tune of 176 yards and a tutty in a game that also saw Daniel Jones get benched. Which of the Giant calamities do you think is worse, George?
Oh, it's no question Saquon Barkley getting his revenge because they paid Daniel Jones instead of him. And he even said after the game he talked more bleep than he normally does in a game. And when you have that kind of game, you can talk all the bleep you want, Tone.
Harry?
Yeah, so this is all about Saquon Barkley. I know the revenge game thing, it like teeters on a banned phrase for us, but like the fact that he went out there and like they let him walk and then he ran all over you back on your home turf, to me, that's the greatest thing that you could possibly do.
Split the points. We'll move on to Showdown 2. The Mahomes Magic play. Can I say it for everybody? This is not Mahomes Magic. Can we agree? It's not anything but refs would call a penalty if we hit one eyelash over the sideline or fall with our body weight anywhere near a QB. Sorcery. That's what that is. KC 28, SF 18. The injury news for San Francisco worse. It keeps getting worse. Brandon Ayuk. Did you leave yesterday's game thinking more of Kansas City or less of the 49ers, Harry?
Feeling bad for the 49ers, thinking more of the Chiefs. The fact that they're not playing their best football. Patrick Mahomes leads the NFL with 8 interceptions, and they are still undefeated. The NFL is in trouble when they finally figure this thing out, which they will.
George?
Toad, less of the Niners. Without Christian McCaffrey, the red zone numbers are dreadful. They're unfortunately falling apart now physically as well. This is bad. And by the way, for the Chiefs, we haven't had a team that was the last team to be undefeated, win the Super Bowl since 2006. So bad omen for the Chiefs.
What team was that in 2006 then, George?
The Colts.
Yeah, I remember that year. Harry Lyles Jr. getting the point, though, and the FaceTime.
So you might have saw last night Beanie Bishop of the Pittsburgh Steelers picked off Aaron Rodgers twice. He was a player that I had actually interviewed before the Duke's Mayo Bowl. He played for West Virginia, was a guy who had a winding college career, started off at Western Kentucky, was at Minnesota where he was known as the Zombie Lord amongst his teammates. That was his alter ego. Obviously ended up at West Virginia. He is a guy that has worked incredibly hard, and to see him have those moments last night is not surprising, even though he was an undrafted player. I actually went back in my notes and looked at what their defensive coordinator told us, Jordan Leslie. He said, Beanie cares about how we play, how he plays, and the opportunity to play. If you throw a football out there, Beanie's going to be the first one to pick it up and play it. And so to see guys like that, who we interview them all the time, week to week for these Thursday night games, to see somebody like that work so hard and have his moment like last night, Beanie, shout out to you, man. Keep it up.
How about Harry Lyles Jr.? This is a post-FaceTime bonus. Go to the notes for his FaceTime. I love that. That's going to do it, folks. Thanks for coming around. We're on a 23.5-hour break. See you tomorrow.
No Beansy.